Alright, so hey guys, so I grew up in Mount Pleasant, Texas, which is a really small country town. I grew up in a family that my mom took us to church. My dad was actually the son of a pastor, but because of some of the things that my grandfather did, he was just kind of pushed away from Christianity, and how his father never showed up to any kind of games. So I never really had a father really push me into really knowing who Jesus was. But in the beginning, I had learned as a young age of playing sports that baseball was a really great talent that I had been given. My dad and mom would always show up. They would always encourage me and what I was doing. And so as time went on, I started to notice that I was quite a bit better than most that were around me. And so I became the kid that you wanted on your team, the kid you wanted in the ninth inning and all those types of things. Well, as I got to about 12 or 13, it really kind of went to where I was loving the way it made me feel, and the way that people would talk to me afterwards, and how it built my pride, which I didn't understand at that age. So as time moved on into high school, I had met a guy right before my freshman year of high school, and we would go down to his house, and his mom was never really home, and his dad was never around, and so there was a lot of opportunities for things that I shouldn't have ever been around, but happened. So that's where pornography began, because he had watched it, and so I started to notice things and see this types of stuff that started to take root in my heart. So as I moved into high school, then I began to seek out women and seeing what I had already been watched on a video. Well, my sophomore year, I had begun to date. That's when I actually began to drink as well. And I began to drink because I played football and baseball with all of my teammates. And the people that I had to go to church with, they would actually begin to make fun of. And so I began to think to myself, how long am I going to be able to stay around and hang out with them before they start making fun of me and being, the person they're joking about? And so the enemy just kind of twisted my mind, and so I began to drink so that I could fit in and I wouldn't be casted out or alone, so around my teammates. Well, not long after that, then that's when sexual morality took place. Being under the influence, I knew something was wrong, but I didn't want to be a guy that was like, oh, you weren't willing to do this, you weren't willing to do that. I was more worried about what they were going to think instead of staying true to what I knew. So I began to get noticed my sophomore year of high school and the ability to play. My junior year, we began to get a new coach, and my senior year, I actually got a new coach. But my senior year coach, he took me around and introduced me to some coaches. I got to do some workouts, and I actually got offered a scholarship. So that just added in and boosted into my pride. Well, my senior year during football, I actually was hit and fell and twisted my shoulder and ended up tearing my labrum. So the doctors told me if I wanted to play baseball that I could. However, they figured that I should have surgery, and it was my choice. So I chose not to have surgery, and I went on to play my senior year of baseball. Well, they gave me 2 shots of cortisone throughout the year. I was taking 6 ibuprofen before every game. And the way our district was, and we didn't have a lot of pitchers, I would actually play shortstop every game and then close every district game twice a week. Well, towards the end of the season, I knew I was getting tired, my arm was bothering me, but I went to another tryout to try to better myself and get another scholarship. And when I was there, they had me throw from the outfield for the first time, and so I began to throw to third at home. Well, when I threw home, my shoulder popped, and I was like, man, that really felt weird. And so they're like, hey, will you throw across the diamond for us after that? And I was like, yeah, sure. So then I went to shortstop and threw across to first base where they're clocking my speed. So I get finished, and the coach asked me, he goes, hey, do you pitch? I was like, yes, sir. And he's like, will you throw some off the mound? And so I was thinking to myself, Lord, I didn't even say Lord. I'm saying that now. But I was like, I don't know if I can really do that. But I did it anyways, and I ended up clocking about 94, 95. But when I got done, I went to shake the coach's hand. I could barely lift my arm. And so I told my coach that was driving, I was like, something's wrong. And so I went and I had an MRI done, and I had torn the back part of my labrum almost completely apart, and the front half was hanging on by like a thread. And so my senior year, now I had to have surgery, and I lost my scholarship to go to play in college. And that really spiraled me into a really deep depression. I had lost everything I'd worked for, and I was angry. And so I went to my freshman year of college in a sling, and I'm like thinking to myself, I'm going to college, everybody's there to have a good time and have fun. Here I am in a sling, not playing baseball. How attractive is that to be wearing a sling? Because I always got my value from the way women would look at me and whether or not they were pursuing me. And so internally, I was just really broken. And what began to happen is I would feel myself with alcohol, I began to experiment with marijuana for the first time just to suppress everything that I was feeling, to try to make it go away, and not understanding I was doing that at the time. But as time went on, I began to experiment. I remember a night there were some people that were going to come and basically fight with me, and I was pretty nervous at the time, so I ended up sticking a knife in my pocket. And I'm thankful to this day that the Lord didn't allow anything to happen, because I don't know if I really would have stabbed somebody, and I don't know where that would have taken me. So after that year was over, my freshman year at UT Arlington, I called back the coach that had given me a scholarship before, and he told me he would be willing to give me some of the scholarship to come and play, but I couldn't get the full benefits. And so I told him, okay, that was great, because I thought, here we go, if I go play, I should be fine, So I get there, and everything starts out fine. I'm having a great fall. Well, then I'm around some other guys that are doing some different stuff, and so I had gotten to the point where I was still battling all my internal issues, but now I was getting so tired I couldn't keep up with my schoolwork, and the only way to play is if you pass. So then I began to add Adderall on everything that I was already doing to keep myself awake and to be able to be intelligent in my schoolwork. So as that went on, I began to lose passion for baseball. I was having great. Everyone's like, you're doing so well, but I was like, I was not as happy, and it didn't fulfill me anymore. So I left after the fall semester and turned away my scholarship again. I came home back to Mount Pleasant, and I was like, what am I going to do now? I was just searching, to fill myself with something. So I began to look at becoming a firefighter. So I went through fire school as another way to do something else. I finished that program. Well, my high school coach for my senior year calls, and he's like, what are you doing? I was like, well, I just told him I was fixing to be a firefighter. He's like, well, why aren't you playing? You have such great talent to play. I was like, well, I'm not. He goes, well, what if I could get you a tryout? And I told him, yeah, sure, I'll try. And so he calls me the next day. He's like, I've got your tryout in Tyler at this college. You want to go? I said, yeah, sure. So I go there, and I throw and do all the things that they normally have us do to really get a good evaluation of how good we are. And they offered me a scholarship, and so I was like, all right, great, I'm going to play some baseball again. So I began to get excited. Well, little did I know that the team that I was on, my entire team smoked marijuana, and 4 people on my team dealt marijuana, and we had one guy that was a Christian that didn't do it. And so that year, it kind of compounded everything that I'd already been going through. And what made it a little bit worse is I began to add HGH into my body to give me that human growth hormone to help me play better. And I began to associate what I was doing to my success in baseball. And because in baseball, I always say all these superstitions, if something's working, don't change it. So my mind, I was like, oh, I'm doing all these bad things, but hey, I won a gold glove, I'm one of the best on the team, this is what I'm supposed to do. Well, after the season was over, I got an invitation to go up north in Iowa to play for a summer. And when I got there, the first 2 days, we got to really play and really be evaluated again to see who's going to be the starting position. Well, on the third day, the coach came to me. He's like, hey, you're going to be my starter, but today I want you to get a little bit of work in after I take the other guy out. I was like, okay. Well, I had already taken 2 higher doses of ibuprofen that were 500 milligrams apiece, and so my tendon was bothering me. But I get ready and I go out onto the field, and when I go in, the play is the first one to me, and I rear back to throw, and my arm snapped in half and broke. And I remember falling to the ground. I'm like, what just happened? I was in shock I didn't really understand what was even going on. So I ended up having to go to the hospital, and they do x-rays and basically saying that my bone twisted like a wooden bat and shattered. And they told me that there was nothing they could do, and I was like, I couldn't understand. That didn't make any sense. So I finally called back home, and the doctor that I spoke to, he was like, I need you here as soon as possible. Well, during that time, when I would move or lean back, my bones would hit together and it would hit my nerve. So by the time I got back home, I had lost all function of my arm. My whole entire arm was numb. And so the doctor told me they put a metal plate and 13 screws in my arm, and that there was no damage to the nerve, but that there's possibilities of some side effects that would happen whenever it got hit through the bone. And so he told me my arm should heal in 4 months. Well, now that I've been home, and it's been almost 5 years since I've been to church from starting college, I go to church with my mom, and I'm sitting there, and this is when I've been completely sober-minded. I'm able to think clearly, and I'm sitting there listening to the guy preach, and I feel a physical presence come down in front of me, and I hear the Lord speak to me in my mind, and he shows me my entire life. And he said, I still love you. And I didn't even love myself or even value myself. So I told him, I was like, all right, I want you, I just don't know what to do. And he's like, I'll teach you. And so I was like, okay. Well, after that time, 2 months after my surgery, I had went to a baseball game with a best friend of mine, and he had begun to drink, and he ended up getting frustrated with something that I did. And I asked him if he would just leave it alone and we could talk in the morning about whatever happened. Well, he pursued me anyway, and eventually he takes me, he slams my arm into a fence, and then he kicks me in the face. And at that point, in our past relationship, I would have been pretty angry, wanting to punch him and fight with him, but at this time, I'm unable to do that. And because God had already changed my heart from that first moment of meeting him, I was heartbroken and sad. I eventually got home, and I asked God, I was like, God, what do I do? And he told me to forgive him. And in my life, from the time I can remember to high school, I always fought with people. I would never forgive people. I held things against people. So this was the very first opportunity to let something go, even though they were wrong in doing it. And so I did, and it turned my brother and my dad actually against me. They were really angry and wanting to do something to my friend because of what he did to me. But what they didn't realize is by going and doing something to him, it actually hurt me even worse because I was sad for my friend. So time goes on. 2 months later, it's now been 4 months after my surgery, and nothing's changed in my arm. I still have no function of my arm and no feeling. And so the doctor was like, well, we'll just wait a little bit longer. And they make this mold with strings and springs and everything to hold my hand up to try to make it have some, to try to generate some movement in it. Well, 5 months goes by, no change. 6 months goes by, no change. And during this time, I actually ended up going back to school during the fall, and they allowed me to play fall baseball. And they let me hit. I couldn't throw, but I could actually just let my hand hang on the bat and actually hit. And I ended up winning the MVP of the fall semester in our college. And after we were done with that, God said, "You see what I can do with you, and you're not even a complete man yet." And I was like, man, that was amazing. God just uplifted my heart and built my faith in how much He wanted to do with me and could do with me, even when I was still basically paralyzed. And so 7 months goes by, and it's now rolled over into the spring, and I'm sitting in my room and I'm talking to the Father, because in this first year and a half of this new relationship, I literally just talked to God all the time. For some reason, I didn't read, and I don't know why, but He was talking to me. And He said, "Son, you just love baseball more than me." And He showed me how I had idolized baseball my whole life and wanted everything that I could get from it, the praise, and that I was building my own kingdom so that I could be worshipped, just like Satan did. And I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, I don't want that. If that's the case and I never get to play anymore, I'm okay with that. And the very next morning, guys, I woke up right back to normal. I had full throwing mobility, full feeling in my arm. I could throw 90 miles an hour all over again. So I called the doctor and I tell him, he's like, "I need to see you," because he didn't believe me. So I walk in, I shake his hand, and as far as I can remember, he says, "I can't explain what happened. I can just say you're a miracle." Because normally when a nerve comes back in healing, it comes back in stages. It's not immediate that you get fully functioned. So after that, I then thought, oh, here we go. I'm fixing to go back to playing baseball. I'm fixing to go back, pick up where I left off. But now I got Jesus. And I get there in the team, and then there's another guy starting in my position. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Well, then like weeks go by and I don't start. And I'm like, well, why am I not starting? I've got a Golden Glove. I hit way better than this guy does. And then I started hoping that he would do poorly and fail so that I could play. And I was sitting in the dugout watching one day, and God just talked to me with the kindest, loving voice. He said, "But why can't you be happy for your brother? Find ways to encourage him and to make him better instead of hoping it is poorly so that you can play." And that really hit my heart, and really got breaking off selfishness and pride and being willing to put someone else before myself. And so throughout the rest of that year, I began a heart transformation. God really began to work on my heart, revealing things that were in me that I didn't understand why they were actually making me behave a certain way. And so at the end of the year, God had put on my heart that it was time for me to leave this college. Well, during the course of my transformation, it put my relationship with our coach really in not a great place. And God taught me how to love him even when he didn't do what he was supposed to have done to me. But I go to meet with him and ask him for my release papers, because in college you have to be signed off and released to go play at another team. And before I'm fixing to walk into the room, I'm like, God, you're going to have to restrain me, because I know if he starts to get mad and cuss at me that it's going to make me angry inside, and I don't want to be that way. I need you to help me. And so I go in and I'm sitting in the chair and I ask him, hey, coach, I would like to get my release papers. I'd like to leave. And he just goes off on me, cussing and yelling and standing over me. And it was amazing. I literally felt like God dropped bricks and of like cement on my hands and my body, and I couldn't move. And all I did was listen. And at the end of it, I was like, okay, thanks, coach, which is so outside my normal way of behaving. And so I'm walking out, and God's like, hey, go talk to the athletic director. I'm like, okay, I've never really even met him before. So I go, and I was telling him the situation. He goes, oh, yeah, no problem. I'll sign them off for you, and handed it to me, and I was able to walk away that day. So after this transition took place, I got invited to go play overseas and represent the United States in Prague, Czech Republic, and Barcelona, Spain. And during my time there, I got to watch God transform my abilities in a way that I never thought were possible. I literally played some of the best baseball that I've ever done in my life. And in doing that, I got exposed to a person that knew someone that was looking for a player like me with the position. And after I came home from that trip, I received a phone call from him. He's like, hey, I heard what you're able to do, and I would really like you to come up here to our college. And it happened to be in Mount Pleasant, Iowa. So I'm going back to Iowa where my arm first broke, and I live in Mount Pleasant, Texas. It's like, man, is that coincidence, Lord? It's like, that's just really weird that these things are matching up like that. And I told him, I was like, I really want to pray about it. And so I prayed that night, and the next morning I woke up with this just desire, like I have to go. And so I call him back and tell him, hey, I'm coming. He's like, great. And so I go up there, and this is my senior year of baseball. And now it's been a year and a half since I actually met God, and I've been working through this transition of understanding what he's really like. And I get there, and I get to a place now I'm all by myself. And I meet a few guys, and they want me to go out and do stuff. And the first couple of nights, we go out to these parties and stuff, and I don't drink. But then the one thing they offered me on like one of the nights, they're like, hey, do you smoke? And I was like, no, I used to. And I shared with them kind of why I wasn't doing what I was doing. They were like, oh yeah, that's cool and all stuff. It's like, it's not a big, it's really not a big deal. And I didn't understand the time how Satan was trying to manipulate and twist the truth, because now I hadn't been reading, and these guys just brought up scripture to support what they did, and it threw me off. And so I was like, well, I guess it can't be that bad, because I remember the guy saying, well, God put everything on the earth for us to use. Everything's natural. And I was like, did he really say that? And so that night, I actually partaked in smoking marijuana with these guys. But after it happened, I became so fearful and afraid that I actually went outside the house we ran apart and hid in the trees until it was time to go home. Because the fear of the Lord had come on me, and I did not want to get caught. I did not want to get tried. I didn't want this to ruin me. So that brought me into a whole new awareness of the Father, and he started then encourage me into the Word and really understanding what he says, who he was, how what his heart is for people in certain situations, and learning how things can be manipulated against me from the enemy standpoint to try to entice me to do things that I didn't want to do. So to fast forward a little bit, the year we're almost into spring baseball, and I have one guy on my team that just will not give me a break. He just persecutes me all the time, calls me a Jesus freak, and he's like, you're just better than everybody else. And God really taught me how to love an unlovable person, because as time would go on, he would make me so angry that I'd be like, dude, if you don't get away from me, I'm going to punch you. And be like, okay, great. And he'd walk away, and God would be like, I need you to go apologize to him. I was like, are you serious? And he's like, yes, I want you to. I was like, all right. And so at first I didn't want to, but as I went and I really wanted to tell him I was sorry, I really meant that I was sorry. And I would go and talk to him. He's like, yeah, whatever. I was like, no, dude, I really want you to know I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have spoke to you that way. And that wasn't kind and loving. And he's like, okay, great. Well, spring baseball rolls around, and we get our list of who we're going to be rooming with during the spring. And this guy's my roommate. So now I'm rooming with this guy and sleeping next to this guy who will not give me a break. And I remember asking God, I was like, God, why do you keep putting me next to this person? He said, because I'm perfecting love in you. And so going through those situations, I got to see people at this college at first look at me as someone they didn't want to be around because I was supposedly better. I was a Jesus person. But the more they come to know who I was and who I was in the Father, that I didn't judge them in where they were. I was just following the Lord and loving them where they were at, serving them like the Father served us and coming down from his throne, and watching people be drawn to the Father when everything around them was like, why does this guy do this? Well, he doesn't even do that. He sits here and doesn't drink while we do this. And so it was amazing to really watch the fulfillment of who God was in an environment around me, and I didn't really have to do much. And so as I came home from college, I then began to really pursue Father in the Word. And as I came across scriptures where Jesus said, if you believe in me, these things will happen. You know, heal the sick, raise the dead, cast out demons, and all those types of things. I was like, God, I've never heard that before, but if that's real and that's truth, then show me. And so I began to walk through situations and listening to the Father about going to pray with people and watching God heal people. And it was amazing to finally come into a place where God goes, this is who I am, and this is who I've called you to be in me. Not the things that I used to be, not what people say, not what situations do. And so now, living from that, who I am now, has totally transformed my mind and my heart about really knowing who God is in a full-on experience, not head knowledge. And so I just thank you guys for taking the time to listen. And I just want you to know each one of you are amazing, and you're a child of the King, and you each have a destiny, and I look forward to you fulfilling that.